All right, so let's dive right into this. The Tate brothers are back in the U.S. Andrew and Tristan. You remember them, right?
Yeah, those guys facing those charges in Romania.
Yeah, exactly. Human trafficking, all sorts of serious accusations. And now they've landed in Florida.
Landed in Florida, it's been making waves. I mean, they were under a travel ban, weren't they?
They were. CNN, Times of India, everybody's talking about it. But somehow, Romanian prosecutors lifted that ban.
It seems like it was at the request of their lawyers. I mean, it's pretty wild, isn't it? They're back in the U.S. facing all these allegations, and they land in Florida, of all places.
Florida, yeah. Governed by DeSantis.
Exactly. DeSantis, who's been pretty vocal about his, well, disapproval.
And he's not the only one. The Florida Attorney General's got something to say about this, too. They're looking into the Tates.
Zero tolerance policy, they're saying, for the kind of stuff the Tates are accused of.
Okay, but I mean, does this actually affect people in Florida?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? On a day-to-day basis, their presence might not impact your average Floridian, but think about the bigger picture.
The Tates have this huge online presence, don't they?
Absolutely. And they've been using that to defend themselves, saying they're misunderstood, all this online persona crafting.
But they're real victims in this case.
Oh, absolutely. And their voices need to be heard. There's actually a civil case in the UK right now, 4 women suing Andrew Tate.
Before?
Alleged rape and coercive control. They've said his release from Romania, it's been incredibly difficult for them, re-traumatizing.
So this story's far from over.
Not by a long shot. And it's not just some isolated incident, right? It really makes you think about how we deal with allegations like this, especially when you're dealing with people with wealth, influence, and this massive online platform. This whole thing really highlights just how complicated international law can be. All these different countries.
Yeah, it's not like they can just get arrested here based on what happened over there.
Nope. Extradition, different legal systems, it's a mess. Plus, they've got dual citizenship, don't they?
U.S. and British.
Exactly. You could have 3 different countries wanting to prosecute.
Wow. But beyond the legal stuff, is there any impact on, like, regular people, especially women?
That's a good point. I mean, this is a very public figure accused of some horrific stuff.
Right, it's got to be triggering.
For sure, for survivors of abuse.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Tates have tons of supporters.
And their views, especially Andrew's, have been, well...
misogynistic.
Yeah.
He's definitely made a lot of statements promoting those traditional gender roles. Even said women are partially to blame for being assaulted.
I remember reading that. Seriously messed up. So, I mean, should women be worried? Like with him back in the U.S.?
It's understandable to feel that way. His rhetoric, it can really normalize some dangerous behaviors.
Creates a climate where violence is just more acceptable.
Exactly. And he's profiting off of it. That's the scary part.
Especially worrying when you think about young men, you know?
Yeah.
Still figuring things out.
Right. They're a big part of his audience. And that message can be very persuasive.
So what can we even do about that?
Education's a big part of it. Teaching young people about healthy relationships, consent.
Calling out this kind of stuff when we see it.
Absolutely. It's a cultural battle as much as a legal one.
We need to hold people accountable for their actions, but also challenge these underlying attitudes.
You got it. It's a big conversation to have.
Yeah, it is. But important.
This isn't just some abstract legal case. This stuff has real-world consequences.
It's just, there's so much to this whole thing. Where do we even go from here?
That's the million-dollar question, right? They're back in the U.S., they've got all these legal challenges, but how it plays out, who knows?
You mentioned earlier that a Romanian court, they initially dismissed the case.
Yeah, because of procedural errors.
What does that even mean? Like, could that happen again in another country?
Well, in Romania's case, it seems like there were problems with, like, how the evidence was gathered. Doesn't mean the accusations aren't true. But it just shows how messy these legal battles can get.
So even if they did it, they could get off on a technicality.
It's possible. And that's frustrating, right, for everyone involved, especially the victims.
It's like they're using their money and influence to...
game the system?
Yeah. I mean, they got all their stuff back. Cars, houses, everything.
There's definitely a perception that wealth buys you a different kind of justice. And this case doesn't help that.
It makes you wonder if anyone is really being held accountable.
And what kind of message does that send? Like, there's one set of rules for the rich and another for everyone else.
It all goes back to what we were talking about, the impact on everyday people.
Exactly. If someone like Andrew Tate can just, get away with it, what does that say about how we value women?
It's like we don't take violence against them seriously.
And that's a huge problem. So what can we do, even if the courts don't get it right?
Yeah, what then?
Well, legal action is one thing, but we need to think bigger. Social change, cultural change.
Keep talking about it.
Yes. Raise awareness. Challenge those harmful attitudes. Support survivors. It's a long game.
We have to change the whole narrative.
Exactly. Create a world where this stuff just isn't tolerated.
Well, this has been a lot. We've gone from the Tate's Landing in Florida to, like, the whole state of the world.
It's a big case with big implications for all of us.
And it's not over yet. Who knows what'll happen next. But this deep dive, it's definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too. And hopefully our listeners as well. Keep those critical thinking skills sharp. And, keep asking those tough questions.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
That's it for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep the conversation going.